Thanks. Hi, I'm Gavin. I don't know about you, but to me, social media seems to be a lot about that sort of thing. It's a bit like I'm here, but I'm not really paying attention. I'm not really in the room with you. I'm watching you, or I'm just standing on the edge looking back to where you guys should be, and sometimes lobbing some stuff, some talk, some messages or some communication to you. And of course, you're there waiting eagerly for me, right? Of course. What we found is that there's always more going on than we can possibly imagine. Whenever you're sitting there listening, watching, engaging, doing your Facebook, doing whatever it is you're doing online, you're not just doing that there. You've got a whole lot of other stuff going on. And we often think that someone's waiting for us. When I started looking at this sort of stuff and started trying to figure out what was actually going on below the scenes, I actually turned the spotlight around onto our company to sort of see what was going on internally first, because I thought, there's some really smart people here that they should know some things, and maybe that could help me in doing what I do. And I found this interesting report from the Altimeter Group that was basically saying that in most large organisations, there's not just one or two Twitter accounts and a couple of Facebook accounts and some YouTube channels and so on. There's actually about 178 different accounts that have been set up by your people in your organisation. So if that's the case, if there is hundreds, maybe 200, and this is in general, right? So there's going to be some organisations where this is much higher. There's going to be hundreds and hundreds of accounts that have been set up, whether it's on SlideShare, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on Twitter, wherever it happens to be, there's going to be a lot of interaction going on. They may be with 1, 2, 50, 100, a couple of thousand, maybe 11,000 people who are fans of Lionel Richie's Clay Head. That may be the case. But how do you deliver and create a brand experience that is consistent across all those channels? How do you engage your teams to make sure that that is going to be useful and drive the business value that you're hoping to get out of it? That's where it gets tricky for me. So what can we do and how do we do it? My view is that we can't advertise our way through these relationships. That we actually have to look at these relationships and figure out what we want to have from them. And often that means we encounter immediately a problem of scale. My view here also is that social business, or the practical business use of social media, can help us enormously to do this. And when I look to social media, often I hear this term fail fast. Who's heard of fail fast as a concept? Has anyone ever failed fast? A couple of you. In the corporate world, fail fast doesn't really work because generally it hurts a lot and you don't end up with a job at the end of it. So the challenge for us is to figure out how do we take the best ideas out of the concept behind fail fast, and how do we turn that into something that's going to make us have a job longer than the next 40 days. So when it comes to engaging with your customers, sales and marketing is a great place to start, but it's not just about customers, right? Your customers are people at the very core. Especially in your B2B, people often think that they're marketing to another business, when in fact we're doing the same things that we do with the B2C side. We're marketing to people, we're engaging people, and so on. But this also applies to HR, it applies to marketing, it applies to operations, it applies to communications, it applies to channel, it applies to every part of your business. So what can we do to test and learn in this space, and this is where the fail fast comes. You can start with something small, as Ian was saying, and light lots of small fires, and you can start that in sales or marketing, and that's an easy place to start because you have some control over that. And I started from that same sort of position, and I said to some of my colleagues, wouldn't it be great if we could get up-to-date business information about changes to our customers' businesses? Our customers are much larger businesses than we are, so how do we deal with the change that goes on in their organisation, and how do we reorganise ourselves to deal with that? How can we connect and influence customers beyond a single line of business? Because, in SAP, where we sell to large organisations, we're not just making a sale to one particular group of the company, we're selling it across the whole organisation. Then how do we monitor the interests of these customers and the stakeholders within that business? How can we be proactive and set an agenda with those customers? And how do we respond to the changes when they can and they do take place? Everyone said, oh, that sounds great. But what does that really mean? Well, the kind of concept here is looking at the idea of social selling. And if we look at some recent research that came out of Forrester, where 70% of decisions are being made before someone picks up a phone and calls you, you're suddenly in a very difficult situation if you are not already in that conversation. If you're not leading an agenda or having that conversation with your customers ahead of their decision buying process, then you're in trouble. So you need to think of a way of reaching out there beyond that marketing funnel. Because buyers are less reliant on brands, vendors and analysts. They're checking out their trusted networks. And they're doing that well in advance of picking up the phone and calling you. So what I did is I looked at the folks that we had in our teams and I said, okay, where do we start? We can start with 4 Bs. We need to be able to be found. So we've got some smart people in our company. How do we get those people out there? They need to be known. They need to be known for something other than just being a name or working for a big company. They need to be successful, so they need to be able to demonstrate that they've got a track record, that they have credibility in the marketplace, that they have credibility with customers. And then we also need them to be trusted. So we need to go beyond that level of just being successful to actually having something that is going to be trusted and that their word is going to be able to improve that next phase, which is to increase their audience, to be found by a larger audience. Then we looked at the idea of trust and what is that made up of. And if you haven't had a look at the Edelman Trust Barometer, it's a great way of looking at what is known and what is unknown, who people trust, which organisations they trust and why. It's a great place to start, but really if it boils down to it, trust is your reputation plus action. So it's what you say you're going to do and it's what you do. And to do that, you need to have these 4 things. So you need to have ability. You need people to say, yep, you can do that, and that you execute on those things. You need to have the authority to say what you're saying. The people have to be able to say, yes, I get that, and I agree with you. You need to provide advice. You need to lead people through a difficult conversation. So provoke them, challenge them, but by all means, help them sort out the mess that's in front of them. And then be accountable for that. Make sure that you're taking responsibility in taking that leadership role and taking people through the process of understanding the business challenges that are in front of them. The concept of marketing funnel, again, is where I think it becomes interesting for our business side of things. Because over on the traditional side, we're focused on this whole awareness building and we're focusing on consideration and conversion. And we have this great need to drive loyalty and advocacy. It's part of that whole word of mouth thing that we think is really important. And that applies nicely to things like Twitter, social media and so on. But it needs to be reframed in a completely different way because, as I said, the decision making is taking place above your funnel now. So while we can tap into, on the social side, the search bars, blogs and so on, we can then back that up with research, with reviews and so on. What we're then looking at is how do we reach that mass but also have credibility. So how do you have reach but authority as well. And yeah, likes and fans are great, but what we're seeking eventually is a personal brand alignment between people who are in the marketplace and your organisation. Ian was talking before about the idea of it going beyond CSR. This is what we're talking about here. It's not corporate social responsibility, it's to do with purpose. And finding the alignment between the purpose of your audiences, the audiences, your influencers, your stakeholders, and your business is really important. It means that you have to be provocative in your organisation. It means you have to ask the harder questions. So I went ahead and did this. So at SAP we have 50,000 customers. We have quite a lot. And they're very large organisations through to quite small organisations. But when I say large, I'm talking Procter & Gamble, have 300,000 employees. I'm talking General Electric, who have another 320,000 employees. IBM, you know, again, same sort of scale. So they're many times larger than we are. And reaching those audiences in themselves is huge. It's a huge challenge. So in our organisation, we have a thing called the Premier Customer Network. And that is a grouping of our top 300 customers around the world. And to reach those guys, we needed to figure out where they were. Interestingly, when we started to map this out, and I use this tube map as a great example of this, is we tried to align sense of purpose, customer innovation and ideas in a way that was going to be exposed on our customers' landscape. So this is not our landscape, this is where our customers come into contact with us. So if they're looking at collaboration, they're looking at certain types of things. If they're looking at thought leadership, they'll go to a different space. If they're looking for co-innovation, they're again engaging us in a completely different way. If they're looking for long-term roadmaps and governance and how do we do business together over 5, 10, 15 years, that's a different kettle of fish altogether. But at the very core of this is we wanted to have a space which was about bringing all this together and making those links and those connections between these different points of view. Because what we're seeing is within our customers' organisations, they have complex issues that they need to solve. We have complex software that can help solve them, but we're not making the connections between those 2 points abundantly apparent. And this is what we're trying to figure out, how to do this. And what we're doing is we're mapping the behaviours of our customers against where we crash into them. Often we collide into these customers, and you probably have examples of this in your own life, where you think you've got a great idea and your customers smack into it and they don't even realise you exist until that point in time, or they hadn't considered you in that way. So it's like, you know, when you have a girl that you really like and she says, you know, she doesn't want to date, she just wants to be friends. It's that sort of thing. That's what you want to do. You want to go beyond that, and you need to find a way of crashing through that. So we built this platform called PCN Connect. And we did this by actually asking our customers what they wanted. And the scary thing is that once you start asking your customers what they want, they expect you to follow through, right? So it comes back to the 4 A's of trust. You can say, or the reputation thing. What are you going to do? What are you saying you're going to do? Are you going to do it? Can I hold you accountable for it? And is there value in this for me? That's the nexus there. And so we started building this thing, and I was suddenly getting calls from CIOs all around the world who had my direct number, and they all had great ideas, and they all have much larger workforces than I have. And so some guys would say, I've got 5,000 employees working for me, I would like these 3 things in your platform. And I'd say, great, I hear what you're saying, but someone else over here is saying, I'd like these 3 things in your platform, and I'd like to do these things. They often overlapped, but often they were quite different. If I've got budget for 3 things, I need to negotiate with these really tough dudes on those 3 things that we can get into the platform. So our challenge in provoking a conversation and starting that conversation is you also need to be able to follow through and negotiate on the best possible outcomes for all. So it's not for the faint-hearted. Now, we'd already had some tremendous platforms or shoulders to stand on with this. SAP's community network actually has about 2.5 million members that has been built over the last 8 years or so. About how to deal with this, how to improve the experience, and how to drive value for a lot of people with a lot of different points of view. So I felt like I was, you know, starting from a great spot. But we did look at 4 things. We looked at what is social innovation, what is social commerce, what is social intelligence, and what is social insight. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to focus on those as outcomes for our communities. We wanted to make sure that we could raise the profile of innovation within our business, but also across what we called the ecosystem of our customers. We wanted to make sure that we were driving revenue, business outcomes, innovation for our customers that were going to drive down their costs. We also wanted to create active knowledge sharing, so making sure that there was a space for people to improve their business profile and their expertise. And then also, the cool thing about platforms, and you know this from Facebook, right, is that the value of a platform accrues to the owner of the platform. So you build a platform and you make sure it's useful to someone, and then you get extra value out of it, and that is the social insight. So when someone searches for your stuff, you can find out. If they're searching for things that you don't expect, you know about it. If they're connecting up with people that you didn't expect them to connect up to, That's kind of cool as well. And you can see all this because you own the platform. And what you're ultimately trying to do is you're trying to create an orchestration layer on top of your social platform. You've got a social platform, what do you want to do with that, and how can you achieve those outcomes? So we also know that you have to dig your well before you need it. So you really do need to do your homework. You need 4 things. You need to map your audience presence, you need to seed the conversations that are taking place, then you need to cultivate them. Make sure that if someone's having a conversation and it goes nowhere, put your hand up and say, hey, what's that all about? What's that question you're asking? Can I help you find an answer for it? And then you can harvest for impact. But you've got to do the first 3 before you can do the 4th. Everyone seems to jump to this harvest for impact. How can we get more value out of the likes? How do we get people to sell stuff? You know, you've got to do the hard work first, because with the hard work comes deeper relationships. And deeper relationships will decrease all the other key indicators you have, whether it's cost of acquisition, whether it's retention and loyalty, whatever it is, those first 3 steps will impact those KPIs. What we found in conversations with our customers is that they don't really care about our digital, our social, our mobile strategy. They don't care. They could care less. They want it to be seamless. They want one user ID to get access to everything. And if it was on TV, even better. If it was on my iPad, even better. I don't want to have to go to different places. Okay, this is a chart from David Armano over at Edelman. And it's a really great way of explaining this, but I think it needs to go a step further. It needs to talk about in real life, because digital interactions are great, but really the value comes in this sort of space. It comes in the networking, in the connections face-to-face, and it comes into the whole idea of we can trust the person behind the name because I can go and see him and say, Gavin, I thought your ideas were great, but you know, they don't actually work in real life. And then you have that reality check there. This in real life aspect is really important because we're dealing with distributed communities. So if we're connected on Twitter and you live in different cities, what you're going to do is you're eventually going to meet up and you're going to be able to come to that person face to face. You're going to have that collapsing of hierarchies that we see in business right now, and you're able to get to that person and say, this is not working. To combat that, we need to do 4 other things. So we need to think rules of engagement. What works and what doesn't work? Where am I willing to go? You need to also think about swarms and tribes. How do people come together? Why? And how do they move between those things? You need a ritual and culture. So what means, how do you mark your belonging to that culture? How do you mark your Twitter handle? How do you put a t-shirt on that says, I'm part of this thing? You know, we're here and we're all wearing these red badges with name tags. We're all members of this tribe for today at least. And then who are the leaders out there? Who are the influencers? And what's the purpose underlying all this? Because no one's doing this out of the goodness of their heart. There's always an agenda at play. What we're talking about is a layered experience. And our challenge, and everyone's spoken about this so far today, our challenge as on the digital side is to go across there. We can't have a dichotomy between where we are and where in real life is, in traditional marketing, in outdoor, in above the line. Wherever it is, we need to work across all those things because that layered experience is what our customers want. It's not about us, it's about our customers. If we can figure out what that customer experience is and drive towards it, then we might have a conversation that we can start talking about. And here's one of a really good disruption that I'd like to think about. Who's had a tweet on Q&A? No one? You're smiling. Okay, so there's a guy on Twitter called Wolfcat who has these t-shirts that you can buy for $25. So I got a tweet on Q&A once, and he tweeted me and said, hey Gavin, why don't you buy one of my shirts? It says, I am famous. One of my tweets was on Q&A. And I thought that's pretty cool. So for $25, I'll buy one of your shirts, and I'm helping him buy a camera apparently. But what it's doing is it's giving me an offline validation for what I'm doing online. So years ago, it used to be that I'd have to drive someone from in real life experience. For example, when we're at McDonald's and I wanted to really start driving the Happy Meal brand experience, it took us 18 months to get www.happymeal.com put on the wrappers that go out with every takeaway meal because it takes that long. Because everything is prepared way in advance. So that drove a lot of traffic back then. But what we're seeing now is that's inverted. People are connecting online and they're coming into real life. They're meeting up at McCafe. They're meeting up at Internet Show World. whatever wherever we're at. Because that's what's happened. We've already connected online, we get a sense of our wavelength and we're connecting that way and we're coming in. And now what we're seeking is that validation face-to-face. What we're trying to do is bridge the gaps. So in some of the successes we've had with our strategy with our premier customers has been specifically around bridging those gaps for those customers. Some of the things they said to us very early on was that we don't care about you. We know who you are, take your logo off. They also said, I remember one of the CIOs for a big energy company in the US said, Gavin, I want you to be more Google and less Yahoo. I just want to start typing. I don't want to click on your stuff. I just want to start typing and get answers to my questions. And to me, it was self-apparent, but yet, why didn't I know that already? I should have known this already. And by asking those questions, what it allowed me to see was that our customers had different objectives to us, that our customers had particular agendas, not between us and them, but between our customers. They wanted to ask our other customers what they thought of us. They wanted us to facilitate that. And they thought that was completely fine, right? As Rob was saying earlier, when you get different agencies in the room and they're all trying to do different things, we're kind of looking at each other with daggers in our eyes. And that's a real challenge. I used to find that when I was working with McDonald's, that I'd be going in to talk about digital and someone else be coming to talking about promotions, and we'd be looking at each other thinking, how can I get more of your business? It's part of the way that we work. And yet McDonald's would bring us into the room and say, you guys get on. You're here now, get on. And, we do, of course. But what we're looking for is this play across the different channels and across our different suppliers. We need to start bridging the gaps between ourselves so that we can find value, because the more we spend in these lockdown fights, we're losing creativity that can be applied to creating value for our customers or our clients. It's a way of building trust. If you find ways of doing things that are going to have positive outcomes, not just for you, not just for your business, not just for your clients, but also for your clients' customers, then you're going to actually create something of significant value for everyone. And as the value increases, budgets become available. So, parting thoughts. What we started off with the Premier Customer Network was looking at co-innovation. But we realised very quickly that co-innovation is a process that takes a long time to mature. We did find that there were 3 key areas. So we could create professional benefits for our individual members. So we could raise their profile, we could educate them, we could provide bonuses to their reputation, we could give them a path for growth. Then there was also business benefit. So our customers and our partners found that innovation was actually a really great outcome, because they were getting ideas, opportunities they hadn't even seen before. They were also getting them faster. They were able to reach people who had knowledge and could give and share that knowledge very, very well and very quickly. And then also the quality of that increased enormously, because one idea alone is just one idea, but 5 or 10 ideas that start to come together and play off each other starts to create momentum and movement, and that's what you do need. And then finally, measurable value. I think about 2 years ago, the community network at SAP stopped having KPIs around sales, and that was because the value was not just aligned to sales. It was impacting so many other KPIs across the entire business that it became a ridiculous measure for them. So what we were looking at were things like efficiency. How do we drive loyalty? How do we drive top-line growth, for sure, but how do we also drive market impact? So they're business indicators that are really coming through a concerted social media business-oriented program. And that's, if you follow all those tips, I'm sure everything will work out just fine for you. Good luck.